All right, let's jump right in. We're heading back to the late 1890s for a story that has it all: heavy iron, a ticking stopwatch, and an idea that honestly changed everything we know about work and productivity. And it all kicks off with one specific number. So, this was the number that defined a man's workday at Bethlehem Steel: 12.5 tons. I mean, just picture that. That's how much pig iron one guy, just one, was expected to haul onto a rail car, day in and day out. It was absolutely brutal work, and everyone just assumed, well, that was the max. That was the human limit. But what if it wasn't? What if that limit was just a myth?
I mean, can you even imagine walking up to someone back then and suggesting that, hey, what if one person could do the work of almost four people? You'd be laughed out of the room. It sounds completely nuts, right? Well, that's the wild question at the very center of this whole thing. And believe me, the answer, it turned the entire world of management upside down. Okay, so before we get to the amazing solution, you really have to feel the problem. Just try to picture it. A sprawling steel yard, right? You've got these huge piles of crude iron blocks. We're talking 90 pounds apiece. And a crew of guys whose entire day is just lift, carry, drop, repeat. All day long. It's grueling, back-breaking stuff, and as we're about to find out, it was also just shockingly inefficient.
See, there was no system. No one had ever sat down and actually thought, what's the best way to lift this thing? How should you walk with it? How often should you take a break? None of that. The workers just did what they did. They followed tradition, what the guy before them did. They basically had to pace themselves based on gut instinct, just to make it through the day without collapsing. So when you boil it all down, this whole approach, it wasn't scientific at all. It was just a mishmash of tradition, what feels right, and a whole lot of guesswork. Sure, the iron got moved, the work got done, but what nobody realized was just how much potential, how much productivity was being left on the table. It was a huge, huge amount. And this is where our main character walks onto the scene, a guy named Frederick Winslow Taylor. Now, Taylor was a consultant, and he had this idea that was, for the late 1800s, just completely out there. He looked at all this guesswork and thought, no, work isn't an art, it's a science, and it should be treated like one.
This really gets to the heart of what he was all about, what eventually became known as scientific management. His whole thing was forget what you think you know, forget tradition, forget the rule of thumb. Taylor's toolkit was different. He used a stopwatch, he collected data, and he observed every single motion. His goal was to find the one best way to do any given task. And the difference between these two approaches? I mean, it's night and day. On one hand, you've got the old way, right? The workers are in charge of their own pace. It's all based on gut feeling. But on the other hand, you have Taylor's new system. Now, management is designing the process, and it's all based on hard data and careful measurement. This was a massive shift in thinking about who's even responsible for planning the work. So you might be asking, okay, great theory, but how did he actually prove it? Well, Taylor didn't just write a book. He rolled up his sleeves and went right down into the steel yard. And he didn't just bark orders from the sidelines. He set up a full-blown, systematic experiment to break down the seemingly simple act of loading pig iron into its smallest parts. And when I say detailed, I mean incredibly detailed. He literally had a stopwatch and was timing everything. How long does it take to bend down, to lift, to walk? But here's where it gets really clever, the genius of it all. He wasn't just timing the work. He was timing the rest periods. He realized that the biggest enemy of productivity wasn't laziness, it was fatigue. So he calculated the perfect, scientifically proven ratio of work to rest to get the absolute most out of a worker without completely destroying them. Okay, so once he had his perfect process designed, Taylor needed the right test subject. He found a guy, he called him Schmidt in his writings, who was, physically a beast, but also had the right mindset. He needed someone who would just follow instructions perfectly, without asking questions or trying his own thing. Schmidt's job wasn't to innovate or think. His job was to execute the scientific process exactly as he was told. So there you have it. Taylor's got his radical theory, his scientifically designed process, and his ideal worker. The stage is officially set for what is, no joke, one of the most game-changing productivity experiments ever. And the results, well, let's just say nobody saw them coming. They were absolutely mind-blowing. Look, the data here really says it all. Remember that number from the beginning? The average guy was moving 12.5 tons a day. But Schmidt, by just following Taylor's very specific instructions, work for this long, now rest for this long, was moving, wait for it, 47.5 tons. Consistently. This isn't just a little bump. This is a complete, total, off-the-charts transformation. Let that sink in. That's a productivity increase of almost 380%. That one number, it was like a bomb going off in the industrial world. It was the ultimate proof that it's not just about working harder. In fact, it's more about working smarter. The how is just as important, maybe even more so than the effort itself.
But wait, there's another really important piece of this puzzle that people sometimes forget. This wasn't just about squeezing more work out of Schmidt for the company's benefit. No. For hitting these incredible new numbers, Schmidt got a 60% pay raise. And this is so key. Taylor's system wasn't just about making the owners richer, it was about creating a win-win. Higher productivity for the company meant higher pay for the worker. The incentives were aligned.
So, okay, what's the big takeaway here? Why are we talking about a story that's over 100 years old? Because this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. The principles here are absolutely timeless, whether you're leading a huge company or just trying to organize your own work. It really comes down to these core ideas. First, stop guessing. Use actual science and data. Second, separate the planning from the doing. It's management's job to figure out the best process, so the people doing the work can just focus on that. Third, you gotta tie incentives to performance. Reward people for doing a great job. And finally, standardize the work so that you can get those great results over and over again. And that's really the lasting legacy of this whole experiment. Now, look, some of Taylor's methods were, let's say, controversial, and we've evolved a lot since then. But that central idea of using science to analyze and improve how work gets done, that is the granddaddy of all the modern concepts we use today. We're talking lean management, Six Sigma, you name it. It all traces back to this. And really, that's the bottom line, isn't it? The pig iron experiment proved once and for all that massive gains don't come from just telling people to work harder. They come from building a smarter process, a better system for people to work in. It just leaves you with one big question to think about. Where in your own work, in your own life, are you still just relying on the old rule of thumb?